The Apache Junction City Council work session.
Is this thing on?
Got roll call?
You bet. Mayor Wilson,
Yes, here.
Vice Mayor Rizzi,
Present.
Councilmember Biggs,
Present.
Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Gremmel,
Here.
Councilmember Nesser,
Present.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. Agenda items. Now, can we join any of these together, or we have to do them all separate?
I would recommend you join them together if they relate to each other, but you would have to read them together instead of they're being under one presentation.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it up to Larry. Can we join them together? Which one? Yeah. Okay. I don't want to overstep my bounds here. Okay, presentation discussion on proposal resolution 2113 and 2115 and ordinance number 1502 and 1504. Okay.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Kelsey Shatnick. I'm a planner on staff, and tonight I'm going to be presenting to you the proposed text amendment changes to the current medical marijuana ordinances to include recreational marijuana. Just to give a little bit of background, on November 3rd, 2020, Arizona passed the Smart and Safe Arizona Act relating to the responsible adult use, regulation, and taxation of marijuana. And then on December 1st, 2020, staff was directed to amend the zoning text that addresses the medical marijuana criteria to include recreational. And just as a refresher, this is the direction that was given to staff. I took this out of the meeting minutes. Councilmember Rizzi moved to direct staff to allow existing dispensaries to become dual licensees, require CUP amendment process, operate under the same rules as existing dispensaries, allow recreational marijuana sales to, but no cultivation or processing, allow medical marijuana to convert to recreational marijuana through the CUP amendment, and the code to still allow for medical marijuana cultivation and infusion kitchens. And then Councilmember Evans' motion to add on to Councilmember Rizzi's motion that marijuana be treated like retail and liquor stores in the B1, B2, and B3 zoning districts. So in response to that, staff created two draft versions of the text amendments. The first version allowed dual licensees, regulated recreational marijuana establishments the same way as medical marijuana dispensaries, and did not allow recreational marijuana testing facilities. And then version 2 allows standalone recreational marijuana establishments in the B1, B2, B3, and B4 zoning districts, and regulates recreational marijuana in the same manner as medical marijuana dispensaries. And then there will be additional changes to either text amendment that we go with to add recreational marijuana into the non-residential use table, as well as definitions to the zoning ordinance. So the Planning and Zoning Commission held a work session on February 23rd, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended to move forward with version 2. Again, just to recap, that one would it added text to include dual licensees under the medical marijuana regulations, and then it had an entirely different section relating to recreational marijuana to allow standalone facilities in the B1 through B4 zoning districts subject to a conditional use permit to regulate it in the same manner as medical marijuana, and then home cultivation allowed for individuals 21 years of age or older. A public hearing was held on March 23rd, 2021. They made one change to the original text that was proposed, and they changed number 11, discussing cultivation for patients, and the wording originally read qualified caregiver or caregiver's home, and it was changed to qualified patient or patient's home, just for some clarification. And again, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended the approval of the amendments to version 2. So basically, I know there are 4 different items, so it might get confusing. So ordinance number 1502 would adopt the specific changes to the medical marijuana regulations, again, recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Resolution 2113 declares the proposed language a public record and adopts that by reference. So those two are linked together. And then ordinance number 1504 adopts the incidental changes to the commercial uses and definitions. And then again, resolution number 2115 would declare this language a public record and adopt it by reference. So that kind of concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to pull up any of the text that you had questions on and kind of go through it, or whatever direction you guys want to go with.
I'd like to know what their reasoning was in general for choosing one option over another.
So basically, some of the comments were that they thought that it could boost our economy, business friendly, that medical may fade away with time, if it becomes available to everyone. So their kind of thought process was to get ahead of it and just start regulating them like a retail or a liquor store. So that was kind of the discussion and reasoning they gave.
But there would be no issue if we initially didn't go that route and initially went with the other version, and then down the road saw the trend and went back and changed it to loosen up a little bit, per se. There wouldn't be anything preventing us from doing that, would there?
I don't believe so. I believe that that's how you could do it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have one question. On 21-147, on the, I don't remember where it is, it's on the 3rd page of the, not the draft, or maybe it's, I had it a minute ago. What it says is that facilities have to be 750 feet away from schools, and
So that,
did you just pass it? Yeah, right here,
Right here.
right here.
so the spacing requirements, if you're referring to the draft that has them treated separately, the medical and then the recreational, those spacing distances were taken directly from what was already in the current code for medical marijuana, and we just included the same spacing requirements for recreational.
The only reason I brought that up is because I remember years ago, we had a big discussion for establishments that sell alcohol. And if I remember right, don't they have to be a quarter of a mile, 1,250 or 1,300 feet or something like
I
that?
think
I don't remember.
I believe this.
And I was wondering if
spacing
it was the same for this and alcohol.
I believe this spacing is larger than
Okay.
alcohol. I think alcohol is a smaller distance.
Yeah, because they sell alcohol at the Walgreens across from the high school, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I don't
that's
know what the
true.
measurement is, though.
There's a 300-foot requirement
Okay,
for liquor.
that's what, all right. I couldn't remember. Where am I getting that used to be such a distance of like a quarter of a mile? I remember it was, I don't remember what that was for then.
Could that have been initial medical marijuana when it was first coming in?
No, it had nothing to do with marijuana. It was years ago, like 10 years ago or more, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that we had the CUP, Rudy, at the,
It just seemed like there was something at one time that there was you had to be a quarter mile away from high schools and stuff like that, but,
AI or A1, whatever you want to call it, it's a quarter mile between dispensaries
okay.
or another medical marijuana use. So we're proposing to keep that distance between the dispensaries or the recreational facilities themselves. But to some of these other protected uses, it would be 750.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
So I understand that some of these changes were made because planning and zoning felt that the medical marijuana will start to fade away and so kind of get ahead of the game. Now, isn't there like a 20% tax difference between medical and recreational marijuana? where if you had the medical card, you'd be paying like 20% less
Yes.
taxes. I don't see that ever going away. You
Yeah,
know,
there is a difference in the
People would be out of their minds
Yeah.
to
I don't know.
My
drop the
cons-
card.
Sorry about that. My concern is just that it's easier to go in hard and lighten up than to go in too light and find out that you should have been a little bit more strict. This is all new, and so that was my concern with the P and Z's recommendation on going in a little light.
Mayor,
Yes.
what is, Kelsey, I understand some other communities, I believe the city of Chandler, kind of, when all of this first came out, said, we're not doing it at all, allowing recreational marijuana. Are there other cities across Arizona that are doing that as well? Are we seeing a trend in that, or are we kind of seeing a mix?
It's a mix, depending on if there are already existing facilities, because
Okay.
you can't make it more difficult for
Correct.
the recreational. So it depends on what is in different cities, and that's kind of how they base their ordinances.
So, if I'm correct in how I read this, and this is all still very confusing for me, but version number 1 or option number 1 allowed us to still allow the 2 facilities that we have now with, I think it's Nature's Wonder and Nirvana, I think, and allow them to transfer and become recreational facilities, but not allow any more. Is that correct in my understanding?
So it would be moving forward with any new ones.
Where we would not allow any new facilities to come in, but we would allow those 2.
So those 2 are already, they're already in operation, and I believe they're both already operating as dual.
Correct.
So they would be able to remain in place, and then these would just be moving forward. If anyone came forward with a new proposal, these would apply. I don't know if we're necessarily preventing any additional
But it would be,
dual facilities.
and Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have that ability? I think that might have been something that was discussed with the prior council, but it was opted to move to this type of option.
That's correct. You had the ability, council had the ability, but the council decided, no, you're not going to ban them like other cities have. And there was a model resolution that the league put out that basically made it illegal because the legislation that was passed allowed cities and towns to do that. But they had to pass it by a certain date, and that's done. So now it's too late to do that. And a bunch of cities and towns did do it. I was asked by the attorney lister of what we were doing, and I told him, well, we haven't acted on it yet. Other cities have, like Chandler, that was the big one. I think Suarita said no also. Some smaller cities down, but it's a mixed bag. But the option was there. That's correct. So this is a policy decision now on whether you want to go with either one, but the direction to staff was to go with number 2, I believe.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I have a lot of questions with different parts of this. I almost felt like Robin Barker reading through this, finding different things that were kind of way too open. But as far as, yes, we have the ability to go and do it again, if a retail opportunity came to the city, why would we say no? And that's the way I looked at it. Yeah, we can redo it, but then someone who wants to open, I mean, we've never said no to a bar if they had the correct location. So why would we say no to another business opportunity to have to come back to council and then add it back in again? It would, you know, we talk about making things time-saving wise. That would just expend time. And they're not going to be on every corner because the market wouldn't sustain that, just like you wouldn't sustain a bar on every corner, you know, especially when you have more than 4 corners. So I think it's wise to put it in and leave it as once and be done with it, rather than put someone who had a legitimate business plan idea approved from the state have to go someplace else to collect that sales tax. I mean, we're not here to stop businesses.
No, but I think it's also a matter of shaping your community.
I agree.
And we want to determine, we don't have adult industries here in Apache Junctions. I mean, so we kind of shape the community by the types of things that we allow. And
So do we
we've already,
eliminate bars?
well, we've already worked with these two. This is something new, though. This is totally new. These are new waters. And so we already know these established businesses. And so my concern would be opening it up too much too quick, when you can go back and do that very easily. And it's not necessarily a time consumer, but it's let's not get overzealous, and let's learn and progress as the needs of the community. My other concern is that I'd like to find out what neighboring communities are. Chandler was one. I'd like to have a list of the neighboring communities that are not going to allow it, because again, if we open up that door, we're going to bring. We need to look at how many. If we're going to have a flood of people coming here with trying to open that business, and is that what Apache Junction wants?
Well, and I have a couple concerns. I mean, Apache Junction, you hear all the time, we have a plethora of tire shops, tattoo shops, smoke shops, and liquor stores. So I don't want this to be the next thing that we have a plethora of. So I do agree with Krista on that. But I think the other piece here as well is, on one hand, this really shouldn't matter, but I don't believe we're getting sales tax revenue off of the substance itself. It's just the retail items that go along with that, correct?
Your Honor, if I may. So the medical marijuana and recreational, we do get sales tax at the 2.4% on all sales. So
Including the substance.
including the marijuana itself. There is a 6.6% sales tax for the difference between the medical marijuana and the recreational. So a person with a medical card has a lower tax rate than an individual coming in just wanting to purchase their marijuana. They have a higher tax rate. But either way, the city is, we can't tax them differently. So whether it be medical or recreational, it's the 2.4 that we collect on everything. So the marijuana and all of the paraphernalia that goes with everything.
And I don't think you're going to increase your sales tax revenue by having them on every street corner. The people are going to use the ones that you have. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of dividing that up between 5 or 2. I don't think having it on every street corner is going to say, oh, we're going to generate more tax revenue. No, because if they're not buying it here, they're buying it here. All you're doing is splitting it up.
Well, they're not going to have one on every street corner. That was my point. Just like we don't have a Beals on every street corner, the market itself will determine how many extra ones there'll be. But
well, and they are required to be 1,300 feet between another dispensary.
We have the regulations. Why would we stop a business that's been approved by the state, done their homework, they want to come here? It's not like a bar where they're sitting there using it on site. They're taking it home with them. So it's not that it's going to add to any type of negative appearance. I mean, nothing can be used on site. So
what would
it's
the
another
benefit be?
Retail outlet.
What would the benefit be? Because the tax revenue we're generating isn't going to increase just because we increase the number of places. People can get it from where they can get it. So what would be the benefit of adding 3 or 5 or 10 more?
But I also think there's a public relations piece to this too, because it's based off of a CUP. So every time one of these businesses wants to come into the city, it's going to be in front of planning and zoning, and it's going to be in front of council, if not once, twice, depending on how long it takes us to get through. And do we want that image in our community every time? We have done a phenomenal job these last several years, in past councils especially, at changing the reputation of Apache Junction being a drug town, being what we were known for in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And I have a problem with potentially putting that back into the community. And I think this is a problem across the state. Unfortunately, the voters of Arizona screwed us over on that one. But
Mayor, may I ask a question? So is there any way that we can limit the number of dispensaries?
So they kind of operate similar to medical, where the state only gives out a certain amount of licenses. So you couldn't have a
cluster.
overabundance of them in the city, I believe.
But we do have the ability to say that the two that we have now are grandfathered in. We will not allow any more. And if those two go away, and a new business, like Gail's saying, if a new business wanted to come in, we can review the code. If 2-3 years down the line, when we're expanding down south and there's potential room for growth down there, we might get more businesses that want to come in. We can open that door again. I think Krista's kind of hitting the nail on the head, where don't open the floodgate and expect and try to bring it back in. Let's ease into this. We have two. They've been great partners to the city, as far as I'm aware, and see kind of how the community reacts to this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
correct me, Joel, the state approves the licenses. There's only 100 and however many. But if someplace down in Mesa or Tempe, if they want to move out here, they have their license there, but they can move here. We could have 10 different dispensaries want to move to Apache Junction, couldn't we? Isn't that how it works?
There is a transfer provision within the state, and yes, if you could have so many in your city, but if they go through the right regulations through the state, there is a way to transfer their license to AJ.
So if every one of our neighboring communities shut it down and ban it,
They'd want to come out here.
they could potentially all move here.
That I'm not sure the regulation says that, but there is a way to transfer. I don't know if they have a limit. Perhaps Chelsea or Kelsey, I apologize. Kelsey or Rudy knows the answer to that.
But that's just based off of the medical side, correct? That's not recreational. Right. Recreational operates completely differently. So that's the problem too, is that I'm looking at this as right now, Tess, you're correct, under the CHA, recreational facilities, I think we can only have 3 in Apache Junction and Gold Canyon. But this potentially kind of makes medical facilities mute. I mean, I agree with Robert's point about the tax differences. I don't think that's going to happen. But recreational facilities can operate just as its own business and be good. And from what I'm seeing, I mean, we're allowing them almost everywhere. And that's actually another question I have, Kelsey, because from what I was reading, medical facilities are allowed in B1, B2, B4, and B5, but recreational allows in B3 and B5. Why the difference?
So not in B5, but B3, it allows it. And basically we wrote it like that because the direction was to treat them like liquor stores, and so we looked at it as liquor sales are allowed in the B1 through B4 zoning district, and so we chose to include that as well. That's the logic behind it.
So I don't think the fear factor that we're going to be flooded with these businesses any more than we're going to be flooded with any other business is a reason to make it exclusionary, except for the 2 existing, which does nothing but boost their businesses up. We're going to be going through a huge expansion down south. There's going to be retail down south. To have it excluded, to me, is just an extra times, an extra step of putting a business that wants to open here in it's on our books as, no, we can't do it. We'll have to redo our ordinance, or they could go to Gold Canyon and say, oh, well, we can go there. So then
Gold Canyon can have it. I mean,
Well,
They don't want
but you don't like it, and that's your personal right. And whether you like it or don't like it, it's still a legitimate, voted-in business. And why would we stop any business or put a roadblock from coming here? Why would we make it any
So-
harder just because you don't care for it?
strip
like
clubs and
we're-
adult
and-
facilities are
We're
legitimate
not
businesses, and
we're
they're
not-
restricted.
And we're not talking about those.
But
it's
it
the
is,
same
it is the
concept.
same thing. It's apples and
shaping your
apples.
community.
If you're agreeing that we shouldn't be stopping legitimate businesses, then let's bring that policy discussion up at a later date and allow strip clubs. What's
Well,
stopping us from doing it?
We can discuss jiggle joints at any time you want.
But
But that's not what we're talking about
Mr. Mayor,
tonight.
if I can, and just to clarify, actually, SOBs, that's sexually oriented businesses, are allowed in the city in industrial zones. So they're not excluded. They are allowed, but there's not very many industrial zones. So they can do it, but we haven't had too many applications in the last 24 years since I've been here.
And so here's another thought. The growth down south is gonna take some time. So if we open up the floodgates up here and we open it up, not that it's a fear in any way at all, because I look at it pretty similar to alcohol. So it has nothing to do on my part, I don't know if the other council members, but with fear of anything. It's shaping the community, and are we going to have all of them up here now and have a completely different look and shape and feel to a community down south? I'm not sure that I like the feel of that either. Let's spread the wealth if we're gonna open it up. Wait until we do have the growth down south and let some take place down there. But another example, and this is an easy one to depict, is as far as splitting up a pie. You have U-Haul businesses here in the community, and at first we had one or two, and then we had 3 or 4, and I don't even know how many we have now. The amount of purchases or rentals is the exact same, whether you have 10 facilities or 2. So are we going to increase our sales tax just because we open it up? No. And again, I'm really genuinely looking for an argument of how the city benefits from having 5 over 2. We're not going to increase the sales tax. They're going to sell what they're going to sell. The market is going to be the same saturation. Just the only difference is you're dividing it up between business owners. That's the only difference. And so again, for me, if there can't be a good argument to depict that, yes, we're going to have all this increase in sales tax, my second argument would be, how do you want to make your money in shaping your community? But what's the argument? What's the benefit here? How do we benefit other than just having several of them and being nice people and
and something else that I thought of
welcoming them
when
in?
Krista was talking about, what we've done. I mean, I seem to recall there's a moratorium on 55 and over parks and trailer parks and mobile home parks right now. So we are shaping our community by saying that. And I think that precedent has been set that we are trying to change the image. I don't see how this positively changes the image of Apache Junction. I don't see how this makes people want to move here at all. And unfortunately, this is an issue that we are discussing across the state on multiple levels, and I'm sure multiple councils are discussing this for their communities, but we're responsible for now dealing with what the voters voted in. But that does not mean that we just have to roll over and accept it and go down this path.
But I don't think anybody's saying we're going to have 5 all at once. I mean, they have to figure this out. Krista, you know how you don't just go into business. It takes time. Do you look for the easiest place that you could possibly set up your business? Or do you look for a place that says, well, they can change the ordinance and then they'll let us in, and then if it's any kind of a business, why would we put a stop on it just because? And here's an example, Mountain Health and Wellness. We looked for a area and a lot that did not have to go to zoning. We wanted something that was already acceptable to the kind of business we were going to build and size-wise. So just because we don't put a moratorium on it or only allow the two that's already here, it doesn't mean there's going to be a floodgate of people coming. It's just going to make the process, if someone wants to come, easier.
Larry, has there been any businesses or potential businesses coming forward wanting to open in AJ?
Rudy's got, like the day after it came into effect, all sorts of folks wanted to have smoking clubs and things like that, that probably we wouldn't allow, we can't have it anyway. But I guess the one question Vice Mayor Rizzi keeps asking is, what possible benefit would it have? So I guess I would say, where the Fry's used to be, there are several vacant storefronts in there. So there's some foot traffic that could be generated by filling up a vacant storefront. The Blockbuster has been vacant now for 3 years. I think it's going to be a car wash now, maybe. Might be ultimately better use, I don't know. The strip center that's at Broadway and Idaho, there's lots of vacancies in there. So we've seen the coffee shop come in and the bait shop, but there are other storefronts. So that's the only one I can think of. I'm not taking any side here. I also wanted to point out that if in fact you go with just status quo, I don't think you have to make any ordinance changes. You don't have to choose option 1 or 2. We have 2 recreational facilities that are both medical. They're automatic licensees. You don't have to make any change to the code if you're just going to keep it as it is.
That was I'm sorry, Larry. I just wanted to say that was something I always wondered about with the state law. I wondered if the cities had to do anything based on
the reason you would do something is to prohibit further ones coming in, so you could exclude them. One would be by not doing anything. One would be, I guess, by having language that says you're not going to allow any more, or you want to allow them to go into another place, then you would allow them. Specifically, there was not, maybe that wasn't the Plan Commission discussion in total, but briefly mentioned was the medical marijuana. If you won the lottery, essentially what happened, there were a certain number of licenses, I think 21, then they expanded it to 39. That's like winning the lottery. So those, and those things have changed hands several times. So essentially the nonprofit stays the same, but the operating company, they were paying millions of dollars to buy other operating companies because they know how lucrative it is. So then the notion is that if you were a medical marijuana facility and the city didn't do anything, you won the lottery twice, because now you've made sure that you're the only game in town. So by not allowing other facilities in town, they automatically became dual licensees. So it's really not in the spirit of entrepreneurialism or pro-business that they have a lock on it. So that's the other philosophy I think that could be discussed, I guess, is that these folks won the lottery once, now they're winning it again. And so opening it up allows other folks to check out their entrepreneurial
Split the wealth.
moxie, whatever. Yeah, it's all, a lot of people are getting rich on this, I guess. So anyway, so that was part of the discussion, wasn't a major part of the discussion. It's really a policy discussion, as Joel said, but those are some of the, I think, pros and cons of it. But if you decide that you want to keep it as is, I don't think you have to make any changes to the code. I think the code we have now, except for this one wording thing that talked about what the distance was between the person that's the caregiver versus the person that has the need for the plants, I guess, or the 25-mile
I'm
thing.
always in favor of keeping it simple.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I'd like to actually hear from the officer about the existing ones we have now, if there's been any sort of calls that have escalated just over the years. When I say escalated, I don't mean from one point to another, just from when they opened.
just how it's going, or just how are things going? It's been several years, Lieutenant.
We've had no other issues or any complaints and stuff. The only issue that I'm aware of is a couple of neighbors over off of the Palo Verde just say that they're seeing more traffic, that's it. But nothing that is criminal in nature or that would be out of normal.
No parking lot disputes.
No, sir.
They're pretty mellow.
Your Honor.
Not if they don't get it.
Lieutenant, but wouldn't you say, though, the likelihood for additional crime and/or driving under the influence and those types of things would likely increase as the number of stores that we have in the area that are dispensing recreational marijuana? Or am I just,
I think just like with anything else, statistics will always show, just like bars and grocery stores, you're going to always have more crime when there's more population. No matter how you look at it, the size of the city grow, the crime is going to grow up. How we control and regulate it is members such as yourself and us working together with the community and trying to resolve the issues as they arise and to try to prevent that. So with the regulations that you guys have in place and what the state law has put into place, we will enforce what those are and come up with a strategy plan to continue to combat that.
very good, thank you.
I'm sorry, what are those right now? Because I actually don't know under the new changes. How does that affect on a traffic stop? What are the legal ramifications there?
So just like medical marijuana, you still cannot be impaired, just like if you have controlled substance. If you have a doctor prescription, you go somewhere, if the bottle says don't drive, heavy machinery operate, if you're impaired, you could still be arrested. So we have actually more officers that are trained as drug recognition experts, and we have officers that rely on those other officers to come out and get that expertise.
I had one other thing, and I thought I just forgot it. Give me 1 second. Oh, I know. When Larry was talking about, that it possibly would bring in traffic to other businesses, I don't know, because I'm not a marijuana user, and I don't intend to use marijuana. But interestingly enough, I had this conversation with my 19-year-old daughter. And her comment was her friends, let's hope that's the case, basically say, they're going to go to wherever they normally go to purchase their marijuana. It's not like again, this is just from the perspective of a 19-year-old, that it's not something that people just stop into a store and buy it and then, shop around. So I guess I have concerns in terms of the likelihood of additional criminal problems, like DUIs. Is it also true that these shops, the money cannot be placed in a bank? Is that correct?
That's still correct, as far as I know.
So the federal law.
Till the federal law changes, yeah, if it changes.
So the monies that these businesses, either medical or recreational marijuana, they're having to have some place to put that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Safes or places?
Yeah, the place on Palo Verde was, I think it was like a little antique store. They had to make modifications to the building to make it secure. I think that was part of the conditional use permit, that was part of the inspections, regular inspections, so yes. But I don't know that, these two have no break-ins in the middle of the night, and so whether that's happened. The other one used to be, I think, a credit union or a savings and loan back in the day, whatever it was, a bank. So that's why they kind of tend to go to those. So they have secure safes.
Okay.
They have a vault.
So there's
So
federal,
in a new place, yeah, if it was in a strip mall, they'd have to dig a hole in the floor and put a safe in the floor, or whatever they need to do for their cash or,
so they're still having to store cash because they can't put it in a bank because federal law says it's illegal.
yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, it
Larry,
sounds like what Lieutenant Parker's saying is most of them don't store that on site. They're taking it to another facility that is secure.
Larry, it looks like everything under either medical or recreational would require a CUP regardless. So obviously that's coming before P&Z and us. Are those then going to be pretty standard, or could we see variants of, well, one business is allowed to do A, B, C, the other is not, has to do D, E, and F, but, are we going to get into a lot of potential issues with if we have, okay, the floodgates don't open and let's just say we get 4, now we have 6 in town, all operating under CUPs, are we gonna have 6 different?
We've tried to have uniform conditions under the CUPs. I think we've done that essentially for the 2 that we have.
Okay.
It's really not fair to give one, and actually when the law changed regarding delivery, we actually amended the other CUP to allow both of them to do delivery, because one could do it and one couldn't. So I think we've been pretty even-handed. If there ends up being 4 more and they're all 4 CUPs, they pretty much will have, unless there's neighborhood circumstances very specific, probably related to parking or signage maybe, a proximity to residential, but I think by and large, we've tried to treat them the same, both of them. And I think we would do that with the 4, if there were 4. And the other reminder is that CUPs don't come here unless you want recreational marijuana CUPs to come here. But right now, CUPs go to the Plan Commission and they're done. They only come here on appeal. But certainly that would be a tweak if you wanted to put that in the code to say, okay, CUPs don't come here unless it's recreational. That's, again, your prerogative, but normally they don't come here unless it's appeal.
Just as a reminder, Larry, this is on for tomorrow, right?
This is on for tomorrow?
For possible action and
Yeah,
or no
we
action?
wanted to do it, not just bring it, we wanted to have a discussion as you're having tonight. And then again, tomorrow night, you can decide to, refer it for 2 weeks, or, that's the wrong word.
So
It's,
continue, they could,
I didn't say refer it, I said refer. I tried not to say refer, I was trying to say
Can we refer this?
defer. You could defer it for 2 weeks or whatever you
Refer
want
this
to
to
do.
Lisa?
so one of the options, I just want to make sure everyone knows, one of the options is the status quo, do nothing, right?
Yes.
Another is to go with the
It's
route of the
alternative-
P&Z.
We have 2 ordinances that we can, if you're leaning one way, we have that ordinance. If it was alternative 2, that's the ordinance that's really before you. And then again, if
To
you-
us at staff, this is a very touchy public policy item, and one that we don't, want to get in the middle of. It's certainly one that we need your
And again, if
help.
you're not ready tomorrow night and you want to think about it more, you can obviously defer it for 2 weeks or whatever it would. Continue it to a date certain.
No.
So tomorrow night, we have set up for a public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On both ordinances, yeah.
I have a couple
Yeah, it's a public hearing tomorrow night.
questions.
I'm done, Your Honor, thank you.
You're done?
I think Gil.
No? Okay.
I don't know who's best to answer this, but on page 2, under facility security, it says if a greenhouse is used as a cultivation facility, reasonable measures shall be taken to obscure the facility of the marijuana plants. What do you anticipate a reasonable measure to be? Like, just, that confused me.
I don't know.
You see it?
Yeah, right here.
That's just one of those terms that, what exactly?
And remember, that's language, that's not anything, that's not new language, that's been in the
Yeah.
code.
For medical marijuana.
It's subjective, though.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Evans, the example that comes to mind is, I don't know if you ever traveled down to Nogales, but between Nogales and Tucson, there is a huge growing facility, and it's like a great big greenhouse, but they have the white plexiglass walls, and then the
So it's
see-through
not
stuff is on
see-through.
top. It's not see-through, exactly.
Yeah, the ones in Chino Valley are
Yeah.
white the whole way around.
Right,
But that was kind of, what exactly?
yeah. It's just some-
Because you think of a normal greenhouse as having the glass windows. So you think, because we don't have that, that's an adequate statement?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
But
well, you think so.
But that's
Okay.
different, the cultivation facilities are different than the dispensaries.
Yeah, we're not talking about that now.
No, yeah.
Okay, so on required spacing, it says includes, under number 7A22, it includes library, public park, commercial zone, daycare facility, freestanding church, drug or alcohol rehabilitation center, or group home. Elderly group home, sober living group home, does it matter? I mean,
Any group home.
Group home
Group
is,
home, yeah.
that's defined under the code, so it's any group home.
so,
What's considered a group home under the code?
so even if it's like a senior,
If it's
Group
classified as a
home.
group home by the planning division, yes,
then it's just blanket whether it's,
any kind of group home that is defined under the code and state law.
Granny's protected.
it says that they have to provide and continuously update as needed current list of all persons who are authorized to access the dispensary offsite cultivation. Do we have a problem with that? Have they done it?
Oh, Tom.
I'm sorry, who are you
Well,
talking to?
Parker?
Well,
Lieutenant?
they have
Sorry,
to.
since everyone's looking at me, can you repeat your question?
They're supposed to continuously update who is able to drive around with the pot from facility to facility. Has our two medical places done that? Because they're not cultivating or growing there. So have they provided those
So with-
regularly?
Under the Arizona Department of Health Services that are regulated by, they have to have an actual license, a dispensary agent license.
Right.
So they have to keep those employee names on file, and they continue monthly to provide that information to us of who's employed and who's
So they
not.
have been doing it?
They have been doing that.
Okay, that was,
And they also have to provide any access you've never had issue to get in, and
Correct, and based on the initial direction from council and city and stuff, they've never refused us to have any inspections, random inspections or otherwise and stuff.
okay.
yeah, let's keep those going. And
Yeah, thank you. So this question's for Joel. Because the medical marijuana, you can, you had to be within 20 miles of a facility to be able to grow your own. But now that's different,
I think it's 25.
25. Okay, so it's 25 miles from Mountain View Road to Mill Avenue. And it's 10 miles from Fry Road to McKellips. And this is according to JC in GIS maps. Because those two things contradict each other, we don't have 25 miles within the city, so that doesn't really even apply to us. But because, is that part of the state law that we have to have that in there?
The state law requires the 25 miles, yes.
But now with the recreational, it doesn't matter how many miles you're in, you can grow it. So those two things really are contradicting each other.
They seem to. But there's a lot of drafting problems with the legislation that are really horrific, I think, but
Are we not allowed to keep that, though? And can continue with that requirement, or no, we can't?
We don't have that.
Rudy, what
Not
is
that
your
big.
experience with that?
The home cultivation for medical patients, it would be, for example, it's good to keep it because if other dispensaries between here and Mill Avenue went out of business, this rule would apply. It's kind of a catch-all. Now, under the recreational, anybody, whether you're within 25 miles or more than 25 miles, you can grow a certain number of plants.
Yeah.
And then if there's two people over the 21, you can grow a certain number of plants. So the home cultivation that's in this part of the code is really more for the medical, and what happens if all the dispensaries were to go away tomorrow? Could a medical marijuana patient still get his or her medicine? But other than that, the recreational, you can have it.
So in practice, yes, there seems to be a conflict. However, one's for recreational and one is for medical. But it gets blurred when everybody says, I don't need a card anymore.
Right.
That's a drafting thing that voters passed.
So, and I'm sorry, am I talking too much? Just a question.
That's your right.
So on number 10, where it says about the patient home cultivation, it says that you can also grow it in a recreational vehicle. And I'm like, I understand we have people that live in recreational vehicles, but are they stationary or movable? It just seemed really weird to
Including primary
to
residence.
include that.
Yeah.
If you're a caregiver and you live in a recreational vehicle and that's the only place you can grow it, then I think that's what
But
the
you know what
intent-
I'm saying, like,
The-
one on wheels that's traveling around that could be depositing it
Right.
versus one that's stationary.
Yeah, state law did not preclude the use of a recreational vehicle to grow. It just says you have to grow it in a closet or in some enclosed room, secure room.
Somebody asked the question about the potency of medical versus recreational. I don't know if Rudy or Joel knows the answer to that, the recreational has less potency than
Yeah.
the medical?
Well,
Is that true, Rudy?
Yes. Medical can have a higher THC content, a more higher active ingredient content than the recreational.
What's the top for the recreational?
That I would have to,
That'd be interesting to know.
yeah, I would.
Because some of that stuff is off the charts.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous.
Especially if you grow it yourself, which evidently you can grow it next door.
Correct.
And the amount that you can grow is,
Yeah.
Voters passed it.
yeah.
So far I have 2 items for staff to do, Larry, is to get a list, or I don't know who's working that, list of cities. Okay, we'll check with the league, and then the potency of THC, is that what I heard on recreational? Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll work on that tonight.
Anyone else?
So I want to just clarify as to our options. So under the current regulations, if we did nothing, it would stay status quo, allowing the 2 that we have, which have already converted, and nothing changes. Or we have the option to open it up to anybody who wants to open a recreational facility. And that's really it, correct?
That's correct. Larry, do you want to clarify it all? So under the regulation format, what happens if the council should choose not to?
Yeah, if the council decides not to adopt any ordinance, then the 2 that are here, and they operate under current CUPs, and they have already been allowed to have dual licensees. The other
And
ordinance.
new ones come in. though.
What about
That's the
down
question.
New ones
south?
cannot come in, and, but I think so we would not have any regulations for an additional recreational, and the medical, it's still based on the CHA system, so wherever that applies. The other ordinance essentially would regulate that if one were to come in, it would be B1 through B4, and the separation requirements and the distance from the other incompatible uses.
Does that help clarify?
It does. Thank you.
Kind
Kind of.
of. Well, it does, but so, like we're saying, we want to treat this like a liquor store or a bar, right? Now, but they don't have particular distancing requirements between each other.
No, sir.
So even though you'd want to treat this recreational marijuana stores as zone-wise, they still have to meet their distance requirements.
Yes, so you would say which zoning districts they could be in, and then they'd also have those separation or distance requirements from parks, et cetera.
So
Whereas
they
a
are all
liquor
too-
store
they are all
doesn't
much
necessarily.
different than a liquor store or a bar.
It would be more restrictive than a liquor store, yes.
So essentially, if we just kept what we have, rather than choosing an option, and then down the road did decide to look at it again, we wouldn't be making changes or wasting anybody's time. We would simply be revisiting it and making changes according to how our community has evolved.
Yeah.
In other words,
Well,
keeping
even
it simple.
determining if there's even a need. I mean,
Well,
we may
right
not have
now-
a need.
2 questions that pop into mind is, have you ever driven by the 2 places back before when it was just medical marijuana? they never had a lot of traffic. Now I've been seeing on Facebook and everybody complaining about waiting in long lines to get in once they added recreational. Now, I don't know if that issue has worked itself out, okay? I don't know if that was just the initial rush, you know.
I think they were trying to keep 6-foot spacing. I think
And
they were
stuff
trying
like
to
that.
not
See, and I
have
don't know.
40 people in the store at once, you know.
Right.
So the
It-
code.
So everyone I've driven by, there seems to be a line.
Okay, and it also now seems that there's lots more cars parking in the parking lot, or especially right here at the old First Interstate Bank, Nature's Wonder. But I guess the issue is, the houses south of here haven't even been built yet or hanging. We don't know yet exactly when, and do we even have an issue right now? Let's say that wasn't gonna happen down there. Do we need more right now?
Exactly.
Why don't we just leave it alone and wait till we see what happens south of the 60?
Keep it simple.
I mean, we can always revisit. I'd be curious to know, I know you guys said that there were people who wanted to open smoke shops and things like that. I mean, I'd be curious to know over the next couple months if we get anybody who wants to open one. I mean, there's always that opportunity where they approach us, but I'm leery of opening the floodgates. I really am.
We could always ask Larry and Development Services to just keep track of, over the months, who comes in and asks for what.
Thanks for doing
Yeah.
that, Tess.
Yeah. Clearly, there was a rush at the very beginning. People were asking a lot of questions, what they could do, where they could go, had we started regulating, and the rules hadn't even come out yet at Health Services, so.
But as we
Are they even
grow,
out now? They're published interim rules, or what are they?
Yeah.
As a needs of
Interim?
community
You
change.
mean, have they been approved?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're out,
okay. all
but
right.
they're,
But when this all
they're still
started,
being
we didn't even
tested,
have any
sure.
rules, yeah.
I'm sure other communities are going through the same thing you are, and thinking, well, should we do this? Should we not do this?
no, leave it alone.
Yep.
Well, and I think it will be interesting tomorrow night, too, when it's a public hearing. Let's see what the public,
Yeah.
what we see tomorrow night will be
Yeah.
important.
Well, you got to remember too, it's always a small sample of the people that come. Even if you get a room full, you're talking about how many people compared to how many that we
Whole
actually
city.
serve, yeah.
Right.
So it'll be interesting.
Will be.
Okay,
Get over there.
are we done on this?
We've killed that horse enough.
Okay. We took that big drag and let's move on.
That was bad even for Jeff Struble.
Well, let me-
Discussion of Code Compliance Manager Victor Martinez.
Matt, you gonna help us out here?
Yep.
So tonight, we have Victor Martinez. Some of you have met Victor, and some of you have not. Victor is new to the city. He's been a code compliance officer and manager throughout the valley, and in Nogales, I think you were the development, building official, development. He'll explain who he was. But he comes to us most recently from Queen Creek, and he's doing great things for the city, I think, as a code compliance manager. So that really started this last year to try to professionalize the division and take a more professional approach to it, which I think we have. So some of you, we have done a presentation before the CLI before, so there's some of this. If you've watched the CLI, you may have seen it. Some of you that are currently or were in CLI recently have seen some of it. But we thought it was a good chance to really talk about how code compliance is being handled right now at the city, as opposed to, since the first 5.5 years that I've been here. Some of you, like we've seen Mr. Bowrider talk about how it took 7 years to clean up the property next to him. We have the former 2 mayors ago talked about a car repair shop that had been going on for 5 or 6 years. I think got a lot of neighborhood frustration at the length of time these cases were taking. And I think the new MyGov online and the Solution Center is allowing folks to submit their own cases. And I think we're shortening up the time frame, and so we're having a little less frustration by the neighbors on a lot of these cases. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Victor. He can introduce himself better than I just tried to.
We go underneath the desk and hide.
Sounded like that thing was going to explode.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Victor Martinez. Like Larry said, I work for various municipalities within the valley. Started with the City of Phoenix, worked for City of Gilbert, City of Queen Creek, City of Nogales, and now here in Apache Junction, and also for the city of Mesa. So I've been around for a couple municipalities, kind of know what they've done, and kind of learn from all of them, and kind of bring down knowledge over here to Apache Junction to, you know, make it better over here, make everything the way you guys want it to be. So pretty much a code compliance overview. What do we do here is we work in partnership with the residents and businesses to preserve and enhance the safety and appearance of our community, obviously using the Apache Junction City Code to be able to do that as a guide. You know, we have a goal. That goal is to reduce blight and encourage an attractive, safe, and desirable community, right? That's what we all want. That's what the residents want. That's what the businesses want. So to accomplish the goal, we administer a fair and equitable program. Usually we try to gain voluntary compliance with city codes. When speaking of city codes, we're talking about property maintenance, some nuisance codes, zoning, and some building safety aspects of it. So why do we even have a code compliance program? We have it to help create and maintain a safe and healthy environment, obviously to prevent physical and aesthetic deterioration of the community. We want to protect property values of residents and also businesses, reduce vandalism and deter crime, and establish a framework for community involvement to resolve public nuisances. Obviously, the goal is, like we said, you know, to encourage residential and commercial property owners to voluntarily resolve code violations on their properties, and we want to be that community, right, that everybody wants to live, work, and play in. So how do you report a violation? How do residents report violations? One of the things I created when I got here was create an email for code to make it easier for residents or businesses to submit violations via email. So all they got to remember is code@ApacheJunctionAC.gov. And I think that has worked. I received a lot of emails in that email. So also you can do it in the hotline. The hotline is available 24/7, and we listen to the hotline messages every day. And that number is there, which is 480-474-5112. And also you can do it in writing or in person at 300 East Superstition Boulevard. And finally, using the new MyGov software, which is or system, which is at mygovernmentonline.org, and you can submit a complaint there also, which comes directly to my email. How do we enforce code violations? Well, code officers respond to complaints, accordingly. If we have a serious or an imminent hazard, those ones are responded to immediately. Those ones we go after immediately, and we don't wait any time. If we have other ones that are not as imminent as hazards as some, then those ones can be done usually within 24 hours. We try to go out there and do the inspection. And when I say 24 hours, we're talking about business hours, not counting the Fridays, Saturday, and Sundays, of course. The violations are enforced, so code officer goes out there to the property, verifies the violation. If the violation is verified, then a courtesy notice is issued, which gives the property owner or business owner either 10 days or 21 days to come into compliance. The difference between the 10 days and the 21 days is going to be whether it's a Chapter 9 or a nuisance violation, or if it's a zoning. The zoning ordinance states that we have to issue 21 days for compliance, and the nuisance ordinance says we can do 10 days. After the courtesy notice expires, code officer goes out to the property, does another inspection. If the violation has been cleared, the case is closed. We're done with it. If the violation is still present, then we issue what's known as a notice of violation. Notice of violation is a certified mailing that goes out, and that pretty much lets the property owner or business owner knows that, hey, if you're not in compliance within the 10 days or the 21 days, then the next step is going to be a civil citation, which is what happens after the 10 or 21 days. Code officer goes out, the violation is still present, then a civil citation is issued, which is then transferred over to the municipal court. And so from there on out, usually the hearing date would be between 3 to 6 weeks out, and the municipal court will make the determination as to how they want to proceed with the timeline of it after the arraignment. So our property maintenance standards are from Chapter 9, Article 9.1, and you have the link there if you ever wanted to take a look at it. And that was effective April 1st, 2019. So some of the stuff we deal with in the exterior property and premises is, garbage being stored in appropriate receptacles, grass, weeds over 10 inches in height, dead vegetation, unkept landscaping, and that includes the right-of-ways, inoperable vehicles, accumulation of debris or outside storage, also including the right-of-ways, some exterior surfaces, and what I mean by exterior surfaces, a lot of times you have broken windows, unpainted items on a property, fences, that kind of stuff is what deals with exterior surfaces. And also we deal with green or stagnant pools. Recreational vehicles is the big one that we deal with here. Just the code reads that you can have one unoccupied recreational vehicle be in the residential zoning district, in the side or rear yard, behind the front facade of the residence, or in a completely enclosed garage. Also, the vehicle, of course, has to be considered operable, meaning it has to be registered, licensed, and cannot be occupied. It's just kind of a picture showing, what an operable vehicle. Citations in place. So the process is, notice of violation. You can either go civil or criminal, depending if it's a zoning or Chapter 9 violation. And then, of course, after that goes to the municipal court. So the fines that we currently have in place is for the first offense during a 24 consecutive month period is a civil penalty of $350. For the second offense during a 24 consecutive month period, it's going to be $600. And for the third offense, it's going to be a criminal fine of $1,000 and other criminal penalties as a result of a Class 1 misdemeanor conviction. Also, what we started doing here is what's known as administrative abatement or a court order abatement, depending on what you're looking at the property. So what you do there, state law states that you have to issue a notice to abate for 30 days, explaining your intent to do an abatement on the property. And that notice of abatement has to include a cost estimate of what the cost you estimate is going to be to abate the property. The way it works, we send out those notice to abates. I also post the notices on the property. Usually we receive a response, we try to work with the responsible parties or the property owners. If no response is received, then we start the abatement process. Depending on whether we have to do a court order or we can do an administrative abatement, that's how we would proceed. Lately, we've been using the court community workers to kind of give the residents the best deal possible, right? Because we're only paying the community workers $12 an hour. Where if we were to hire a contractor, they will be paying a lot more. And I'll have some examples here in future slides, and I'll give you an idea of kind of where we're leaning as opposed to where we would be leaning if we were doing contractors out there doing the work. Because after the work is done, then the property is lien for the amount that the city incurred to be able to get the property cleaned up. So kind of right there, you can see some before and afters. These are all properties that we have been working with in code, whether we issue notices, citations, or, abatement notices. This property here is right on Superstition here. And you can see kind of like the before picture and the after picture. You can see how there was a lot of transient activity occurring there and went from having a lot of weeds, a lot of unkept vegetation to just being pretty cleared. Here's a property that was abated, doing an administrative abatement. I think the cost to abate this property was like $300 by using the community court workers. If I would have hired a contractor to do this, we probably would have been looking somewhere in the $3,000 area, just from my prior experience in doing abatements. So this property is up for foreclosure sale. Somebody's going to foreclose on it. Once the property gets foreclosed, then we'll get our money back once title does the sale on it and transfers ownership. So we had weeds, a lot of debris out there. The weeds were up to, I think, 3, 4, 5 feet tall. And you can see the difference, the before and after difference of how it looked.
So it was an abandoned home?
Yes, and this one's abandoned home, correct. Yeah. Here's another before and after. I mean, this is a vacant lot that's located right on Meridian and Broadway. I send out an abatement notice to the property owner. Property owner, this one, he worked with me and he got it cleaned up right away. He didn't want to deal with the abatement process, and you can see the before and after. There was a lot of transient activity in this property, a lot of debris way in the rear of the property. And as soon as the property owner got my abatement notice, he called me and says, "Hey, I don't want that lien on my property. That's a lot of money. Let me just take care of it." And this is, how positive that I think the abatement notices have, or effectively they've been working. So I think people are noticing and they're knowing that we are now starting to abate properties. Also, what we're trying to do here is do some unsafe buildings and structures. For example, you got this one right here, which is also located on Superstition in Monterey. Property is very dilapidated. You have a lot of calls for service from the police department, which means a lot of transient activity going in and out of there. Property is vacant, has openings, so you got a lot of homeless that are going into the house just to kind of stay warm in there during the winter times, or just to kind of hang out when it's real hot. So what do? We're posting this property is unsafe, and we're going to seek demolition of these properties. So that'll give the property owner a chance to see if they want to demolish it or if they want to do the rehab themselves. Then what is it going to take to do the rehab? But what we're trying to avoid here is trying to avoid all that cost for service that the police department is getting. We're trying to avoid any potential future issues. I mean, one of the things I can tell you is by working in other municipalities, there's always time when I hear in the news, children got taken into this property, or there's a lot of stuff that happens, or a lot of drug activity going on in there. The house is going to go up in fires. So that's the kind of stuff we want to prevent now by deeming this property unsafe. So kind of just some stats. Year to date, as of this year, we had 312 new cases that code compliance has opened. There's a minimum standard in place where code officers are expected to do 15 inspections per day. This year, we've done 2 administrative abatements. And the lien amounts on those have been between $200 to $300, so it has been pretty close to nothing. I mean, the residents are getting the best for their money. Of course, both of those administrative abatements that were done were for vacant homes that are up for foreclosure sales already. And then court order demolitions, we submitted one to the city attorney's office that we're seeking a court order demolition on. And unsafe structures, there was one property that was posted for 3 structures, and there was one electrical meter pool where it was just a fire hazard. And we worked with SRP to get the electrical meter pulled, and we got it done. So, any questions on kind of the code compliance division and what we're doing?
What's the tree house?
Yeah, you made him tear down the tree house?
No, we leave tree houses alone. I mean, obviously, we got to look at the different scenarios. I mean, we don't want a tree house that's going to be real big out there and that's going to be a potential issue for a child to fall down or something. So there's a lot of things we take into consideration. And obviously, if it requires a permit, then we'll refer that to the building official who will make the final determination.
On whether or not a tree house is a safe structure.
Correct.
So
We had it before in other cities where there weren't and children were at risk. So that's the thing we want to avoid. We don't want any children to get hurt. Obviously, by
Times
being.
have changed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like the government's taking on a little bit more responsibility of being the parent.
Yeah, because obviously what happens is the neighbor's going to say, well, I called in, the city knew about it, and they didn't do anything. Now the children got hurt. Who's liable? And that's, we want to make sure that we're being safe for the residents, the children, and everybody out there.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be on the owner.
Tonight, we wanted to share with you to get to know Victor a little bit. A year ago, it was a goal by the council to have a manager level position, and we really appreciate Victor coming in and being a part of our team and working with our code compliance division to continue the work that is going on. It's a constant effort. There's always work to be done, and we appreciate all that you're doing, Victor.
Victor, I have one question.
Yes.
So the only people that are charged abatement fees are the ones that the court compliance people participate in? Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying right now is we use the community court workers. But let's say we don't have them available, then we can always hire contractors to do the abatements. But in order to get the residents the best deal, the community court workers is going to be the best deal they get right now instead of hiring a contractor.
So my question is, because I'm on the board of the Community Development Corporation, the people's homes that we've cleaned up, they're not charged an abatement fee.
No, they're not. Correct.
That's
They're not charged an
just
abatement fee. No.
them.
We've only done 2, and those will not be those, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that all of the work done by the CDC, there's no charge to the people.
Correct. No, we wouldn't use
And
CDC
the
for
city
that.
doesn't back charge.
Correct, because you guys get grants and it's a whole different funding. And obviously, we're not going to charge people when you guys are getting grants. That will go against the grants.
Sure.
Mayor.
Yes.
So, Victor, first off, thank you, because I have seen a big difference around town. First off, the Phantom car wash sign is no longer there on Idaho and Southern. And properties, I'm seeing commercially at least, have been cleaned up quite a bit. I'm curious, though, a couple slides back, you had put in, where is it? The inspection process, I believe. The 15 inspections per day. What does that mean? How, explain that to us, please, if you could.
Let's see if I can find that.
It's close to the end. It's actually the second to last slide. I'm sorry. So you have year-to-date new cases, and then minimum standards. Okay. Yeah.
That pretty much says that. So that's not new cases. Just to clear that up, it's not new cases. It means that code officers are going to go out there and do 15 inspections, and that means of all the cases they have, they're going to go out there and visit 15 sites for the day. Whether they're doing re-inspections, whether they're doing court follow-up, whether they're doing new cases, whatever it is, it's going to be 15 site visits per that day. It's a minimum standard that I have for the code officers. And with that, it comes from I work for different municipalities, and other municipalities, their standards are a lot higher than 15. But obviously, what we want here is we want quality and not quantity. We're trying to focus on working more with the residents. We're trying to focus more on doing this, abatement stuff to kind of be more resident friendly. But I can tell you right now, I mean, cities like Phoenix have a standard of 20 per day. Mm-hmm. And other municipalities have standards that are 18 to 20 per day. And I'm not to that standard yet. I'm just trying to make sure you know that code officers are doing the standard. I mean, when I first started here, I'm not going to lie to you, there was an average of 3 inspections being done per day. And that's just by running the stats that I ran on the system that we had back then. And on a 10-hour day, I feel that they can easily do 15 inspections per day and still be able to do the quality that we need here for Apache Junction.
So then in those inspections and such, I mean, obviously they're out and about and they may come across another issue, in the community. What does that process then start? I mean, do they then look at potentially opening up a new case because they happen to be in the neighborhood? Because, I mean, I've had that happen in my neighborhood where it seems like they're, down the street and all of a sudden everybody's getting hit because of something. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, correct. So let's say, we get a complaint, let's say on Braden Biggs' property. We go to your property and you have a lot of debris out there, but also your neighbor to the west has debris. Then we need to open that case proactively because, hey, somebody complained. We need to, that comes to being fair and equitable to everybody. And what we want to do is preserve the property values. So we're going to open proactive cases whenever we see that they need the attention that a co-compliance program deserves. Obviously, I don't have the labor force to be able to have like a totally proactive program here like other municipalities do. But in those instances where we can open a proactive case, we will.
And how many code officers do we have now?
So right now we have 3 code officers and then myself. And I consider myself a working manager. I'm out there doing cases myself. I'm out there helping with the residential solid waste program. I'm out there doing abatements myself also and doing inspections myself, helping the code officers. So when you look at it, you want to call me in, we'll be 4.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Yep, go ahead.
What are the majority of the complaints that come in?
Can you expand on that question just to make sure I
So
understand?
you said that you have like a complaint line. What's the majority of the complaints? Non-running vehicles, weeds, bad buildings?
So majority of the complaints that come in are going to be recreational vehicles from what I've seen. A lot of recreational vehicles, a lot of trash and debris, and a lot of overgrown grass and weeds. So unkept landscaping. So accumulation of debris, storage, and recreational vehicles is what I've seen. That's the top complaints that come in.
And and you oversee the other 3 code compliance people?
Correct.
What kind of training do they get?
So obviously, one of the things that about me is I am right now the vice president of the Code Enforcement League of Arizona. The Code Enforcement League of Arizona is the state board organization, the professional organization for code enforcement officers in the state. Part of being the vice president, and I was the president, and I'll be the president again next year, is training code officers in the state on a lot of different topics, which includes, proper case documentation, how to do evidence, how to do communication, public relations, and other state and federal laws that are out there. So I do a lot of training myself to those code officers. And I also have those code officers attend, whether there are online trainings that are offered by the International Code Council, by the American Association of Code Enforcement or by the Code Enforcement League of Arizona that deals with different topics. So they have a broad understanding of different trainings, and then whatever I give to them also.
How many, and I guess I'm looking for a little bit more detail on the training, and especially geared towards customer service, because that's the biggest complaint I get all the time, is customer service issues. It's not so much the complaint or the issue that somebody's getting a violation for, it's how they're being treated, and I hear that a lot. And so how many hours of customer service training would you say that they're getting a year, a month?
I mean, as far as I give them training, at least I try to have monthly meetings with my code officers, and those monthly meetings include a training component to it. So my meetings are probably about an hour long, and I always talk to them about customer service. I also do ride-alongs with my code officers. I also shadow them, and one of those things that I do is listen to see how they're treating the residents, how they're treating the businesses, how they're handling those phone calls, and I provide feedback to them. All the trainings that are offered by those organizations, such as the American Association of Code Enforcement, Code Enforcement League of Arizona, International Code Council, are all going to have customer service relation to it. I would say at least they're getting a minimum of, I would say 16 to 24 hours just in customer service itself on a year's basis. And like I said, I get complaints myself that come into me saying your code officer treated me differently, and I deal with those complaints, and I talk to my code officers and try to make them, better customer service oriented individuals. Of course, being in the enforcement field, we're going to get complaints all the time because a lot of people don't like the
I
enforcement.
don't like that fallback excuse, though.
And then, excuse me, I can tell you right now,
like,
we're gonna, and the complaints is not that they got the bad customer service. It's
That's like
saying,
the
well,
police now.
I got the complaint, but my neighbor didn't, and look, most of the complaints that I get are from individuals saying you're treating me differently than you're treating everybody else in the neighborhood.
Okay, I'm going to go back to customer service being really important, because this is something that I talk to our city manager about all the time, and along with the development services director. And the fallback excuses of nobody likes to get a code violation, well, that's true, but nobody likes to get a speeding ticket either, and we generally get compliments on how people are treated by our police officers. And I'm glad that you're here, because while you're here, I want to address this. My biggest complaint is not violations, it's customer service and how they're treated. And I have a list, and I'm not going to name them right here, right now, but I'd like to sit down with you and address them, because it's an issue. And sometimes what can happen is people can get in a position of, if you will, authority, that have never been in a leadership position, that take that to the max, with now they have, the ability to, oversee people. And a lot of times when you're in a leadership position with no experience, that happens. It's common. I'm not faulting anybody. That's why I'm suggesting we really need to work on customer service. Because when you're in a leadership position, it's really important that you go in the opposite direction. And it's not necessarily what you say. A lot of times it's how you say. So actually, I'd like to sit down with you. And again, I'm not going to bring my list here right now publicly, but I would definitely like you to be aware of it, because it's an issue. When that's the majority of the calls that I get, people aren't complaining about the violation. They're complaining about how they're being treated. So that's a big deal. Not to throw you under the bus, but it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, correct. Not a problem. I'm willing to sit down with you and figure out what the complaints are that you're receiving.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got people who complimented me for giving them citations. I mean, I had it before, and I had it here in Apache Junction, believe it or not. But, and that's what I'm trying to get to my code officers, and I provide constant training to them on those customer service issues. And I'm hoping that is something that is improving, and hopefully it will improve.
Thank you.
Well, I got a couple of questions in it. Of course, I couldn't get by without saying mine, but what is considered weeds?
So weeds, there's a definition in our code that says pretty much anything that is dead or is over 10 inches in height, that's going to be considered a weed, and there's definitions on what the weeds are. So anything that's over 10 inches in height, we're going to consider weed, and if it's dead.
So is brittle bush then a weed because it's over 10 inches?
And I got to look at the definition. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I believe brittle bush might be in the definition of weeds, if I'm not mistaken, but I got to go back and look at the definition.
Yeah.
It's coming up flowering there now real shortly, so you'll see a lot of them out there. especially even wildflowers. And, you know, some people, and we've had it happen in our community before as well, where they have the wildflowers, they want them to go to seed and wanting them to, I'll say, repopulate, so next year they will grow again, and they wait until they go to seed before they remove. Do we take that into consideration now?
Yeah, correct. While the wildflower is there, it's not going to be considered weed, but once the wildflower is gone, it's considered a weed, and they have to take it down.
So you can't let it go to seed?
Correct, you can't let it go to seed. No, once it's dead, once it's gone, then they need to remove it. But once the wildflower is there, then we can't tell them to remove the wildflower because, you know, they want the wildflower. We're not going to tell them to remove the wildflower. The problem is once it's dead, then that's when we tell them, okay, it's dead now, it just needs to get removed. It's considered a weed.
Well, and you'll recall in this presentation, it's not the highest priority. Weeds. I mean, we wait until
Correct.
certain times of the year that it's probably more of an issue than others, like a fire. Like right now, we have to be careful on our messaging because one minute we're saying we want to have it clear and cleaned up, and we want to help the property owners clear up their alleys and other areas, and we'll get it. If I remember right, last week we just talked about a joint supervision, fire and medical, and the City of AJ fire, reminder and clearing your areas and monsoon coming and all that. So, Victor, how long have you been here?
I've been here 6 months.
So
Tough job.
Yeah, it is, and we really do want to continue to. The how we do things is so important too, and want to keep improving.
I would be curious though. I think in the caseload that you guys are getting, you know, like a report of, you know, what breakdown percentage wise. I mean, is 25% are recreational vehicles, 15% are weeds, or any other issues. I would be curious to know that because I think that helps us determine how we move forward. I agree with the vice mayor. I actually have gotten 3 complaints in the last 2 weeks, specifically in regards to code compliance and the way that people felt that they were treated, and 2 of them were from our business owners. So I am huge in customer service because I've also had personal experiences with this, and it's important that we have that. So I am all on board with whatever we can do to improve that and work with our community to move forward.
Understanding that we do know it's a tough job. We get it. Nobody likes you guys. We get it. But if we can get mostly compliments about our police officers, generally speaking, people are like, oh man, I get a ticket, I think you guys can do the same. I think we can up our game, and I think that we can get more people on board and say, these guys are right. I'm just telling you, you gain more with honey than vinegar. Some people you'll never appease to, that we understand that. But I just want to make sure we have a mindset of just how we talk to people is important.
I was going to say, it's communication.
Yeah.
It's how you communicate.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes down, I hear it all the time, is, well, I don't live in an HOA. Well, you're right, but we still have rules, and, so we can't treat the city like a giant HOA.
Correct, and like I said, if you guys are getting complaints on certain officers, I mean, I'm not going to ask you to tell me who is complaining, but if certain officers are getting complaints, I would really like to know that information because that'll help me better give training to those code officers who are getting the majority basket complaints for customer service, and figure out what is happening with those code officers, whether they have personal issues or whether it's something that I just need to go about in a different direction. So that definitely helped me out a lot more.
Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll call a meeting to close. Adjourn.